Can you hear us, Hemanth?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. So the audience over here said, what did you say? Show us the magic. Okay, show us the magic.
All right. So, since yesterday I've been hiding behind this tree, uh, hoping that I could come out sometime after there's an explosion, but I guess that's now. I guess I can come out now. Hi guys. I actually wanted to do something on a mobile app. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. I want to do something on a mobile app. Radhika told me that I have to do something in AR today, otherwise the talk is not going to happen. So the last 6 hours I've been, working on this to create some sort of a magic in air using augmented reality and show the effect that I just showed you.
We still can't see you.
You still can't see?
Okay, now we can see you.
Oh, it was freezing. Okay. Can you see me now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, cool. So
I have a very interesting audience, and thanks to all of you for coming down on a busy Tuesday evening after work. And just to give a brief idea, everybody over here is in the field of virtual reality or augmented reality.
Okay.
They have questions they will ask, and I'll ask you a few questions, and we'll take it from there. How about that?
Okay. All right. So let me
You guys want to?
try and switch this off. With all the flares going away, it will be distracting. Or let me see if I can get this tree away. I forgot to turn my telephone off.
That was real time.
My Mac is synced with my phone, so yeah, there's going to be a lot of disturbance.
So should I go ahead and ask him? Okay. Hemanth.
Yeah.
So let me go ahead and ask you a few questions.
Sure. Let me first move this tree away. It's a little distracting.
Okay.
Do you want? Oh, okay. I thought you wanted us to move.
No.
The tree is gone.
Tree is gone.
Tree is gone. Oh.
So, yes.
No, it's okay.
Now we have the gorilla next to him. So let me start with the questions. Everybody over here knows what augmented reality, so I won't go into that. So my first question is, with mixed reality as the future, what do you see VR and AR turning into? Or how do you see a blend between all three?
Yeah. So I think when we talk about mixed reality, right? I always have this debate: what is mixed reality? How is it different from augmented reality? Right? Or it's definitely different from virtual reality, because virtual reality is all about generating a new world to a person when he is actually at a different world. But augmented reality, as we all know, is a mix of real world and the virtual world. Now, what is mixed reality, right? To me, what mixed reality is, it's a world where people can get into a virtual reality experience or an augmented reality experience, where the difference between VR and AR is just about the amount of superimposition on the real world that the user is looking at. So in augmented reality, when we wear a goggles or any other medium and then get an AR experience as you're seeing now, Whereas in this case, for example, the gorilla, for instance, it occupies about 20% of my screen estate. But let's say the same gorilla or a bunch of gorillas, and trees and all of them occupy the entire real estate, then it is going to be a VR experience, right? But the way we would do it is through an AR experience, right? So an AR, we start off with an AR experience and cover the entire world with a lot of virtual goods, and ultimately it gets into a VR experience. So to me, MR is a mix of both VR and AR. And in terms of how MR will shape up, it's it's a combination of both VR and AR. So whatever VR and AR would do in the future is what MR is. I mean I don't see a different analysis for MR and a different analysis for VR plus AR.
So do you really feel that the business opportunity is going to come up, or is it just still evolving?
Oh, there are. Now let's just leave away VR/AR. That's what we. Even here, even if there's a press article that is written, it will always be VR/AR. Let's just talk about MR then, right? So in terms of business opportunities for mixed reality, we are seeing opportunities spawn up from a lot of verticals, right? We are seeing opportunities from HR. All verticals, we are seeing opportunities rise up from the HR point of view, human resources, right? We've been approached by a company who reached out to us asking us for a VR solution for HR, for interviews. So that's something that we didn't expect. This was 6 months ago, and now we are also working on a customer service experience in VR. That's again a different idea altogether, right? So to me, MR is what Android or what a Play Store has done to an Android OS. When the first Android phone has come out, right? So there was talk about how different apps can be developed in Android, right? But when you ask someone what type of an app can be a hit for Android, right? So in the beginning, probably it would be like my to-do list, perhaps, or a reminder app is probably a great app, is what someone would have imagined. But you could see now that there's an app for everything. There's an app for everything that one can think of. So similarly, I bet on VR or AR, in other words, MR, to the extent that it would penetrate into a wide range of verticals. And there's no doubt about it.
So which vertical do you see it is going to hit first? Or which are the most promising verticals that are emerging right now?
Yeah, so...
and I want him as an investor and as an entrepreneur. He's an angel investor. He's invested in 4 VR companies.
Right. So, in terms of verticals that are popping up, as I said, I'm very gung-ho about VR and AR, exploding into each and every vertical out there, right? In fact, we were contemplating on creating a VR AR accelerator in Hyderabad, right? So that we could support ideas, from startups who would work for different verticals. In terms of the verticals that I see that could soon become the hot sectors of VR AR, it's a no-brainer that real estate is going to be the first biggest sector. It's a matter of time in which we will see that happen in India, where real estate visualization in VR could be the new norm. But we have already started seeing it across the world. In New York and Manhattan, a couple of years ago, the real estate agents started off by offering Oculus-based VR experiences for people, and they were charging quite a significant amount for customers to view a 360-degree view of an apartment in Manhattan. Right? They were actually getting the customers to pay for an hour of session, because the customer otherwise had to travel to that place, spend like an hours of his time, waste hours of his pay time and everything, right? So real estate was a no-brainer when we think about VR experiences. But off late, across the world, the trend we are looking at, most of us are looking at, I'm sure you guys would agree to it, is tourism. Is tourism and of all sorts. It could be social tourism, where issues in Africa or issues in other parts of the developing parts of the world are shot in 360 and are shown to different viewers in a VR experience, where the user is immersed in that environment and where the user is moved by the story that is told. Similarly, it goes on for entertainment experiences where people could just get an experience of getting on a roller coaster or getting onto a boat ride or something in a certain at a certain island. So tourism is the second biggest vertical that I see as of today, which is getting very popular across the world. National Geographic and Discovery are producing 360 videos every day. And I think Facebook just released a 360 video of Grand Trunk Terminal at New York. This was just done today. And Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg just announced it, saying that they have shot this with their own 360 cameras. So and then 360 cameras are getting more and more cheaper. A few months ago, 360 cameras were the know-how of some people who could get cameras, multiple GoPros together, record using all the GoPros, stitch all the content together, and create a 360 video out of it. Right? We have done a few like that in the past, but now you can get a 360 camera for about $300 to $400. The one, for example, which Ricoh Tita has, and the one which Samsung offers. So I think it's a matter of time where everyone will start taking those cameras, shooting different environments, which are indicators of different places across the world. Tourism.
So can you give us a little insight on how the market in India or China is dealing with the VR and AR? Here in the US, most of the people are aware about its situation, but could you give us some insight on what you feel, how it goes in India or in China?
Yeah, so for China, I'll have to wait for a week because I'll be going to China next week for a VR AR conference. But I just recently read an article about Beijing becoming the next Silicon Valley. I know everyone is competing for that tag, right? But yeah, I'll have to wait for commenting on China. But otherwise, in terms of how a VR AR experiences are consumed within China. But if I have to talk about the manufacturing industry that is in China, for example, and how it is helping the VR industry, right? It is significant. It is more than 90%, and it's a no-brainer. So there's a big company, a very popular company that manufactured the headset called VR Box. I don't know if you guys have heard about it. Anyone know about VR Box?
Yeah, the VR Talk, yeah.
No, VR Box.
Oh, Box, no. Have you ever heard of it?
Let me do it. I think. You guys see this? No?
No, I've not heard about it.
Okay, all right. This is a company which sold hundreds of thousands of those boxes over the last 2 years. This is after Google Cardboard was released. And similarly, there are a lot more boxes which are being manufactured in China. And if you go onto Alibaba or AliExpress or all those sites that sell that help you buy items in China, right? It's all VR out there. It's all VR enablers out there. Mostly all headsets out there. So I think China is seeing that swing in terms of electronics, the usual electronics, to VR hardware, and they are making those hardwares in millions of pieces. Coming to India from a consumer industry or from a consumption point of view in VR experiences, we have started seeing a lot of VR entertainment experiences across different malls in India. There is a popular game zone called Smash, which I think is partly owned by Sachin Tendulkar, the famous cricketer from India. And the Smash game zone is all about giving entertainment thrill rides using VR alone, right? So it's a big, I think about 10,000 SFT sort of a space where there are a lot of systems which have an Oculus for each and every system. People can get an experience of getting to Paris, or they can get an experience of uh, walking on top of a 100-story building, or getting into a roller coaster ride, and etc. etc. So that in India has become very very popular. Smash, I think, has about close to 6+ chains across India, and we're also seeing a lot of pop-up shops which are providing VR experiences using a box like this and a bunch of apps, bunch of VR apps, and that would really cost them about $2,000 of operational expense per month to get a monthly revenue of about 6,000 or $8,000 in monthly revenue.
So
That
as an investor, where do you see, what are some of the pitfalls you see when the startups approach you for funding?
so the investment that I've done is in a company called Absentia. Absentia makes virtual reality headsets, and they make a headset called Tesseract that is in competition with Oculus Rift. So in terms of what excites investors in VR is those companies which are willing to go that extra mile and try and compete with the big biggies there, right? It's not trying to solve the tough problems of VR. When I say tough problems, or why do I say tough problems of VR when VR itself, is very new for a lot of us out there, right? Um, the the phenomenon that we are seeing we have seen over the last 3-4 months is that there has been a huge surge in terms of the number of VR startups that have been created over the last 4 months. In India itself, I bet it is growing at about 100% per month in terms of the number of companies that are spawning up every month in VR. So pretty soon, in about a year from now, we could also see the differentiator to get into VR to be no more. So I think investors would start looking at those startups in about a few months from now more judiciously in those startups who would try to solve the tough problems in VR. By tough problem, I mean, for example, Time is an app which is based in I think it's a company in the US that makes it. Time is the next version of Second Life in some sense, right? Have you guys heard about Second Life?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So Second Life was a very popular destination for a lot of people in 2007, 2008. A lot of tech savvy people in 2007 and 2008, and a lot of tech savvy people who had good graphics cards on their computers. So now, with every phone having a good graphics, a good GPU, and every phone manufacturer talking about good VR performances, an app, for example, which is VTime, enables people to chat in a virtual world, in a VR world, with someone who is physically somewhere else, perhaps in Barcelona, and I'm here, and we could chat in a backdrop which is Antarctica, right? So that has a lot of challenges in itself, in terms of the number of environments that one can choose, one can have rendered inside the phone, and in terms of the communication, it has to be seamless and seamless in terms of audio. And when it comes to video or when it comes to avatar, it has to look very natural, right? Versus the yesteryears when Second Life was there, we had to interact with the avatars using a keyboard and a mouse. But now, the more realistic one can make in that VR app, where users can naturally move around in the VR world, the more popular it will become. So I think investors will start looking at such ideas in future where there are more challenges than a new startup which is starting up and which claims that it is going to produce 360 videos of a certain sector.
I have a question. So,
Sure.
Hemanth, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, all right. So this is Ashish. I was looking up Imaginate a little bit, but if you can talk a little bit about your own company, Imaginate, what it is doing. I could not really figure out whether
Sure.
you're or you're more positioned as a services company that is building things. I saw some of the clients listed as the Indian Defense Forces, HCM and such. So if you can talk a little bit about the kind of solutions that you're building today in India, and maybe something that where you saw the highest adoption, and then another project which you think is really unique and is being used right now. If you can talk a little bit about those.
Oh, sure, sure. So let me also try to give a quick introduction about myself at the same time, how I started Match. Is that okay?
Yeah, okay, please.
Yeah. Okay. So I went to Buffalo after doing my BTech at IIT Madras. In Buffalo, I did my master's in augmented reality. We worked on a liver surgery apparatus where we enable the surgeon to see through a liver using a device like Google Glass and figure out where the tumors are hidden inside the liver. So this was in 2004. That's when we started off into augmented reality. This was a project that I've done alongside with a pediatric surgeon from a hospital called Kaleida Health Hospital at Buffalo. So this
I
was
may have some of it remember the over lunch.
sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, so this was in Buffalo, and this was Google Glass. I mean, I like Google Glass, and come to think about it, this company which made that glass was Litai. Litai was actually in production, 5 years prior to that, from late 90s, and Google Glass got popular only recently in 2012. So anyway, post that I worked with the U.S. Army to another startup in the U.S. and we created a virtual locomotion controller using a wearable suit, an IoT based suit, which would track users' movements, hand movements, and leg movements, and replicate them or mimic them on that of an avatar that the soldier would see using a HMD. So the idea for us at that point of time was to get the soldiers move away from a keyboard and a mouse when it comes to getting trained in a simulated environment to more natural movements that they could perform using suits that we developed, which would sense those movements and then apply that onto an avatar, the soldier's avatar, in a battlefield VR environment. This we produced a suit for using a grant from the U.S. Army for about 3 years. So coming to Imaginate, I moved to Imagine and started Imaginate in 2011. And we started working on a product called Dressy, which is a virtual fitting room for apparel suits. It's an augmented reality product where e-commerce stores can integrate our solution onto their stores through a plugin, through a JavaScript plugin, and could enable their end shoppers to upload a picture and set a profile for themselves. And with the profile setup, they could try on thousands of dresses just by a matter of a button click. So this is something that we have done over the last 3 years. The product has gone through a lot of changes, a lot of pivots. Earlier, we had a kiosk which looks like a dressing table, a magic mirror of sorts, where a shopper can go and stand in front of a magic mirror. I'm sure there are a lot of such kiosks that we are seeing spawning up even today across different parts of the world. Bloomingdale's had one like that in 2013, I think, and Cisco is coming up with something like that pretty soon. So we start off with that, but then immediately realizing it's a big brick and mortar sort of a business, we moved to a online version where we created a plugin, and now the plugin is available on platforms like Shopify, where we enable a lot of small e-commerce stores to install our plugin and enable a virtual fitting room for their end shoppers. That's one line of business for us at Imaginate in terms of product that we have developed over the last 3-4 years now. But while we were doing it, we were also receptive to the requests that we get in AR space or VR space. So we took up a few projects over the last 3 years, only a handful of them. Which and when something like that comes to us, frankly, it's something which the client couldn't figure out through any other company like ours, and then they would finally reach out to us. So in a sense, we would be like solving tough problems, but we like doing it because that enhances our core technology expertise. That which would also be applied to Gussie in the future course. So we did all of that over the last 3 years. But from this year onwards, Ashish, we saw a huge shift happening in the VR space, and we separated a division dedicated to VR in our company, and we started doing not only services in VR, but also building a platform called Lens, which we believe is going to be the WordPress for VR. When I say WordPress for VR, what I mean is it will enable content creators out there to offer custom VR experiences for their end users without having to write any lines of code. Just like people would develop websites by just getting onto WordPress without having to know anything about HTML, we see that while today there is a need for a lot of VR content across the world, but tomorrow there would be this challenge for all the content developers in terms of how they could create meaningful experiences, meaningful VR experiences, stitch them together, and then produce that to their end audience. And today we're only seeing YouTube as one such platform where 360 videos can be uploaded, and end users can consume those 360 videos in a VR headset. But if you think about it, there's a lot more that can be done for such experiences than just providing a passive viewing experience. So we intend to create a very active VR experience through our platform Lens. So we are developing a platform called Lens. While we're developing it, we're also doing a few niche services for clients like Tech Mahindra. Pretty soon for a client called Cognizant. It's a big company in US as well, and for MetLife as well. So these companies are not yet listed on the website, but we already started working with MetLife.
Yeah, no, that's definitely helpful. So in terms of the VR solutions that you built for clients, so can you talk about what kind of problems they've solved and which you would consider as one of your most unique solutions and one of your most successful solutions? So they could be the same or different ones. If you can talk a little bit about that would be great.
Yeah, so I think what is unique is time bound, right? But if we talk about our first success in VR, what we think as our success was in 2013, towards the end of 2013, or it is 2014, sorry. 2014, we created a VR, actually an AR app for this company, Thermo Fisher Scientific, which manufactures pharmaceutical grade refrigerators. And they came to us asking us if we can provide them an augmented reality manual for some of their products. Right? So this was pretty straightforward, but of course we wanted to do something more. So we not only showed them an AR experience of how a product has to be assembled, but our app would also detect when the assembly is completed. So it is not just an AR-based instruction guide, a passive instruction guide, which is still a big requirement for a lot of companies out there. But our app also detects when an assembly is completed or when an assembly is not done. It would immediately detect if the product is wrongly mounted or correctly mounted. So that was just one part of it. But immediately after, we also saw this pain point that a technician, when he has to figure out how the assembly has to be made, he always had to hold his phone, point it to a product, and our app would tell him what has to be mounted. Right? But the challenge is one hand is going to be locked. So how do we make it hands-free? So one option for that was to have a device like Google Glass, for example, or in 2014 they were still popular. Google Glass was still popular then. Or there are again AR devices from Epson and Epson Moverio, and I think from Canon as well, if I'm not wrong at that point of time. But they're very expensive and they're not very immersive at the same time. So we took the Google Cardboard then and created an AR app onto the Google Cardboard, not a VR app. And then we got the technician to wear the Google Cardboard, where we use the phone's back camera, and then with a headset like this, we would just pop up the phone inside. I mean, whatever I'm talking about now is something is something probably not very unique as of today. But we've done this in 2014, where we used this camera here. We created a AR experience, a mixed reality experience for the technician. So this is something that we have done in 2014. But post that, recently at Tech Mahindra, what we have done is we have created a personalized B2B marketing tool in VR at Mobile World Congress. So at MWC, what we have seen is a lot of booths out there who would create entertainment experiences for people who would walk into the store, and they would just give a entertainment experience. And the recall when they walk out of the store at Mobile World Congress is that, hey, this Samsung had this cool roller coaster ride, and that's the recall value that the brand had, right? But this year, when this started off from last year 2015, but this year almost every company, every phone manufacturer had a VR stall, VR experience zone at MWC. And we wanted to do something very, very different. We didn't want to offer the same sort of an experience, same sort of an entertainment experience for a company like Tech Mahindra. So instead of that, what we chose to do was to create a VR experience for the visitor who walks into the store, to the stall, typically who are CXOs of different companies. And in that VR experience, we show different solutions of Tech Mahindra that would play an important role in that VR experience. Right. So instead of offering an entertainment experience, we offered what we actually offered is a 360-degree car drive into Hyderabad and into a mall in Hyderabad. And along the journey for this visitor, we showed different solutions of Tech Mahindra, for example, smart parking, and for example, mobile wallet payment at a McDonald's. We showed solutions like this, where the CXO of the other company would be looking at looking at himself walking into McDonald's, and he's realizing that Tech Mahindra has a mobile wallet solution, and he uses that to pay for his burger. Right. So the takeaway after the experience is, a new experience of getting into a city, for example, but at the same time, how Tech Mahindra solutions played an important role in that experience. So the recall for him is Tech Mahindra has such solutions like a logistics solution or a smart parking or a payment solution that he could consider using, or he could consider buying from Tech Mahindra in the future. That is from thought process. That was something that was completely new that we have attempted to do at MWC this time.
Yeah, I have a question.
It helps. I have lots of questions, but I don't want to monopolize them.
No, please go ahead.
Please go ahead. I'll hold off on.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, Hemanth. This is Vidya. I want to throw some light on what's happening in the VR/AR domain involving children, schoolgoers in India.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so there are, as an investor, I have seen a pitch from a company, from a VR startup, which is focused on creating VR content using Oculus that could be sold to different schools. The idea of that is to offer VR experiences of, let's say, visiting a zoo or solar system, or perhaps a rhyme, right? All of that in a VR experience through Oculus Rift devices, which would be stationed inside the school. So this is, this is a startup which is doing it in Bangalore. So similarly, thinking about it, there are, I don't know much about how it is in the US for kids, but I recently saw bedtime stories implementation by Samsung,
Uh-huh.
where have you guys seen it? Bedtime stories from Samsung VR experience.
Is it running on the gear? This one?
I think probably it is not yet launched on their VR, but there's a video of it going around in Twitter by Samsung. So it's a concept where the mom is on a vacation. I mean, mom's on an official trip, and the kid is wanting to talk to the mom or see her mom, and she's not able to get to sleep. So she wears a headset. It's a concept. She wears a headset, and her mom also wears a headset while she's on an official tour, and both of them get into a virtual world, and her mom starts telling the story. The kid gets to hear her mom talk, and her mom talk about whatever the kid is seeing in the VR experience. Perhaps different space shuttles or different bunnies popping up and things like that, and mom putting her kid to sleep. So that's a concept. I don't know how many parents will agree to this. Will be okay with this, but that was very interesting. Talking about India on similar lines, a lot of companies, at least there's one company that I know of, a lot of companies who want to create content specifically geared at kids and in VR. So we, as a matter of fact, we are building a content development team, another branch of our company, where we are focused mainly on creating 3D content, not 360-degree content, but only 3D content. It should be it should be perhaps a rhyme, a kid's rhyme, or it should be a solar system, or it could be an animal, all sorts of things. So for our platform lens to be popular, we want a lot of content to be put onto it, and the biggest target audience that we can think of is kids.
So, Hemanth, what can you share the name of the company who's working on the Oculus Rift and building content for children?
So I can offline look it up and then share it with you. At
Okay,
the moment, I don't recall the name.
yeah, thank you so much. Are there any legalities which we need to take care of when we build content for children? That's the other thing I want to know.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Legalities that we need to take care of when we build VR content for children. Uh,
Oh yeah, of course. I think the way the way Android has the certifications when it comes to targeting apps at kids.
okay.
Similarly, content that we distribute has to be analyzed if they're appropriate for kids or not, right? Um, but at this point of time, there are no
Uh,
guidelines.
no, sorry,
There are
sir.
no,
I'm not talking about uh, the content. I'm talking about the biological part of children using VR for a longer period of time. And,
yeah, that's what I'm sorry. That's what I'm trying to say. So in terms of content, uh, okay, one in terms of getting into this headset for more than a couple of minutes, that itself could be challenging for a few kids out there. And second, the type of content that you see is what could make you more nauseating or could make you less nauseating, right? With the same headset and same phone that one is wearing. It's not just that someone would just feel like nausea, having nausea just after wearing a headset for 1 minute. It's also the content that you see, which would trigger your thought process in terms of how you move around based on the content, right? So content coupled with hardware, it is definitely going to be a challenge to have it right, have it correctly designed for the kids. But that means content developers have to work with psychologists to create the right content. In terms of hardware, um, in terms of legalities, I'm not very. In terms of selling hardware for kids, I'm not too sure about it in India at least. Uh,
Okay.
I mean, it just has to be more
And
soft and no spikes and everything.
Yeah.
That's all. But to me, the challenge is content.
That is why cardboard actually works because your hand gets tired after that. You cannot keep on
Hold
holding
it for a
long.
long
there are a lot of solutions which come to that now. In the cardboard, which you will see.
Okay, that will work.
You will see tomorrow, right? We will have day after tomorrow is the day. We're going to talk about a lot of VR,
solution setup.
a lot of talks. It's going to be streaming free on YouTube. So I think you should
Yeah.
get bigger.
Definitely, I want to take a look at it.
Lots, there were like 35 talks. Cardboard, if they have solutions here, we have solutions here.
When I talking about price point, right? Are you guys talking about the hardware prices?
Well, I know that the Oculus is like $1,600.
Yeah.
Cardboard is like, of course, you need a phone, smartphone, but other than that, $25.
Yeah. So
Just giving it.
So cardboard, for instance, now is available for about $1. It's $1 to $2.
Why is the fee?
And this headset, which was getting sold at about $30-40 a year ago, is now getting sold at about $8 or $9.
Next is food. Good vibes.
So, in terms of this, so two questions on related to the projects again, I guess.
Sure.
So, what's the ticket size of most of these projects that companies are getting developed, mostly for VR, AR, and how much of how receptive they are? I mean, is it a tough sales job or they already bought onto the concept? So if you can talk a little bit about those two things, that'll be cool.
Based India market? I don't think you got the India market yet.
Oh, so the projects that you have been involved with, I'm guessing, like regardless of geography, but particularly in India, so generally what tends to be the ticket size of a lot of these projects? How much money are these companies willing to spend? And how hard or easy it is to sell them on VR, AR solutions?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's a good one. That's a good question. So most of the projects that come to us are from the marketing sides of these of different companies, right? And and the best thing that people can compare with when it comes to if you should have a VR experience or something else by the marketing team of a different company would be, should we go ahead and create an explainer video or a nice corporate video by ourselves, or should we create a 360 video, which today occupies for the most of VR projects that any company out there is doing across the world, in my view. Most of the VR experiences that one would think of that a company would need, the majority of them would be 360 videos or 360 or 3D experiences, 3D passive experiences, right? So there the comparison is with that of a corporate video that a company would make using 2D tools. So there goes your comparison in terms of budgets. So the budgets in India perhaps would be at about not more than $10,000 or something like that, and in US it could be about $20,000 or $30,000. That is the majority of the projects that we see, but there will be few companies, for example, Tech Mahindra, with what they have done is very different, where we also wanted to give a more personalized experience. So when a user raised a headset, the app that we have developed would call the user's name. It would just say, "Hey, hi John, how are you doing today?" It would recognize the customer's name, the person's name, and would speak out the person's name throughout the experience. So there's a personalization aspect of it as well. And at the same time, there's a mix of multiple worlds together to create that experience. So for something like that to happen, um, because it was NWC, it was very fast for the company to decide. But in general, I would imagine it to take about 2 to 3 months to come to a decision, because the ticket sizes are normally, at least from our point of view, is about $30,000 to about $50,000 to create a more personalized, immersive, interactive experience. This, yeah. So, and 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 in future, in about a year from now, we're also talking to a few large companies who are happy to invest about $1 million or more in a VR experience, but that is going to be a long discussion. But they're okay to spend that money, but then there are no comparables as of now to understand if such an experience, such a project, would get them return on investment. So at this point of time, it's just in about $10,000s of dollars. But hopefully in the future, if there are considerable case studies to look into, then it could get into $3 million.
So these $1 million budget companies, so in terms of the level of like how informed are they about this, or are they the kind that, okay, we are hearing about this VR, let's get onto the bandwagon, everyone is doing it, let's just do it, let's allocate a small percentage of a budget to it. So I mean, where on the spectrum of being extremely informed and knowing what they want to do versus being completely clueless but having money to spend and an interest in the area, do they fall?
Yeah. The majority of the companies out there are in the same spectrum as you said, which is, hey, we're seeing VR, AR being talked about by every company out there. Like a couple of years ago, the buzzword was innovation, right? So every company had to speak about innovation if they had to look cool, right? Innovation is a word which is a tagline for a lot of companies out there. And innovation, typically, you could also correlate it with R&D activity, right? R&D budgets. So, and today, talking about innovation, many companies out there know that VR is an innovative new field that is coming up, and a lot of companies are already creating VR experiences for themselves. So why should we be away from it without getting into it, right? So people are in that mindset as of now. Majority of the people are in that mindset as of now. To spend money, a little bit of money, starting off, as I said, $10,000 and they're not hesitant to go till about 100,000 or more as well. But having said that, there are a handful of companies who have dedicated innovation teams, dedicated research R&D teams within their own organizations, who have some one or two resources in the VR space within the innovation teams, right? So companies are also investing into developing something of their own within the company, and when they realize that okay, a POC is possible, then they reach out to companies like ours to see how they can build on top of this idea that they have spawned within their company. So there are companies who have no clue, but they just want to invest in VR. And there are, I would say, about at this point of time, about 10% of companies who are spending efforts on VR within the organization and are reaching out to large companies to take it, or large external consultants to take it to the next level.
Also, so along the lines of like, since you mentioned that you are also in the investment stage here, the VR conference was organized here pretty recently, and it's considered arguably one of the most premium VR-focused conferences today. But of all the exhibitors, I think half were 360-degree video-oriented companies. The other half were production houses or services-oriented companies. That's adds up to one, and a few that were really truly doing product-oriented stuff or creating platforms or doing something that's likely to move the field forward rather than make hay while the sun shines. So in India, the kind of companies that you're looking at, are they more product-oriented companies, production houses, services-oriented companies? What kind of a mix are you seeing, and what kind of ticket sizes do they expect to raise as part of their initial round of funding?
Yeah, so I think what you have seen at the conference is very fair in terms of the need of the industry, because at this point of time, there's a huge dearth of VR content, right? A huge dearth of engaging VR content. But as I said earlier, maybe a year from now, there will be a lot of such content, and the product companies which are trying to solve tough challenges would be sought after by investors. Right? From an India point of view, at this point of time, we only recently we started seeing content companies in VR. In fact, 4 or 5 months ago, there were only like about 10 companies, a dozen companies in VR and AR combined together who would who would mostly be doing AR experiences, if not AR, who would be doing a VR walkthrough for a real estate sector, right? And when I say VR walkthrough for a real estate sector, it's not a 360 video, but it's a 3D model of an apartment, and being able to show a walkthrough to a client in a VR world using Oculus, right? And the way the end client navigates inside the VR world and using Oculus could be something that the company could innovate on, right? Where it could be the salesman being able to guide the client inside the VR world, right? Using an iPad or something, or the salesman giving tools using HTC Vive, for example, where the customer by himself or herself can navigate inside the VR world, right? But so we are only seeing real estate use cases as of now in India. If we talk about product companies, and we still have to wait and see how they would innovate further, to create the navigation within that environment more natural, and also solving some of the problems like networking, right? Where multiple where a customer who is actually in, let's say, Ahmedabad, and who wants to visit Mumbai can be guided by the real estate agent sitting in Mumbai through two headsets, where both of them wear the same headset, and then they could walk together inside an apartment, and they could communicate with one another, equivalent of meeting that I talked about earlier, to solve a certain utility here, which is selling an apartment. Instead of just an entertainment chat activity, you'll be communicating in a VR world to sell an apartment. Right? So I think all of that, I hope the companies will come in and then try to solve that dedicatedly for, let's say, real estate industry. But more than that, I honestly don't see much product companies coming out of India at this point of time in the VR space. There are
ticket sizes that you're looking at in terms of the initial fundraise, the ones that you come across?
Yeah, so ticket sizes are typically in terms of about 200K to 300K max.
That's in dollars, right?
Yeah.
And and as I said earlier, content companies raising money in India. I mean, there is a need of content, but then content companies raising money in India is a little hard at this point of time. I mean, at least I honestly, I have to think through it if I have to invest in a content company, twice than if it were a product company. Having said that, the dearth of content and all that, but because if we look ahead, like 6 months from now, as you've seen, Samsung gave 360 camera, for example. There are a lot more cameras that will be getting into the market, and creating content is not going to be a challenge. It's mostly it'll be all about quality of content that we do create, the storytellers. So if we have to invest, it would be in a studio that creates compelling stories, compelling short VR movies. That sort of an investment is what we would see that could happen in the content sector, like investing in a movie, for example.
I have one more question, and then I think I'm not asking anymore.
No.
So the company that you invested in, Absentia,
Yeah.
so have they come up with their own SDK? Do the headset has head tracking sensors, or is it just plastic cardboard? Which one of it? Because most of the headsets that I've seen in China are some version of cardboard, or they've come up with their own SDK. And with all the fragmentation, I mean, they have very particular niche use cases. I think not something where you can build for a consumer, like a consumer-facing app, and distribute through one of these established stores. So, if you can tell a little bit about Absentia, that'll be great.
Yeah. So Absentia is a mix of all that you just said. It's like one of those cardboard headsets, like Oculus is a cardboard headset, like an LCD screen plus head tracking sensor and the SDK, right? So the Tesseract is also that. They have an inbuilt display inside the headset, which should be connected to a wire to a PC, and they have their own SDK, which would make any 3D game out there, OpenGL rendered game out there, to be converted to a VR game immediately. Right. So Oculus has, I think, a requirement in terms of a graphics card, and two, compatible game that can be viewed in Oculus. But these guys also have an SDK that could immediately convert. I mean, they're working on a lot of games offline as well. They would immediately convert the SDK will immediately, the service that they have running on the computer will immediately convert the 3D game to a VR-enabled mode, and the guy who wears a Tesseract headset can play the game in VR. And it has its own, gyroscopes and accelerometers, but accelerometer is still a challenge. Like position tracking using accelerometer in terms of accuracy is definitely a challenge. That's why we have XML depth sensors and another fixed frame of reference to like what Oculus has, for example.
But does the support stereoscopic view? Is it monoscopic only?
It is stereoscopic.
Oh, that's pretty good. And if they can do all the, if they have good head neck models and such, that'll be quite an impressive.
Yeah. So this is what talking about that story, right? This is what I have seen alongside with a few other investors at their first board meeting last year, right? What also puzzled me at the same time was some of us have seen the headset for the first time after committing to an investment, right? So that was actually very strange at the same time, but it definitely says a lot about investors' interest in investing in those companies who are trying to be the next Oculus or a better Oculus or a better Google Cardboard or a better YouTube screen.
You want to ask me questions?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
You're like me, did you want to ask me a question? But this is not the business that you want to. Hemanth,
Yeah.
all the questions are exhausted.
Uh-huh.
And if there are more questions, we'll shoot out to you in an email.
Sure.
Okay, but thanks, really, thank you. Early in the morning, I woke you up, told you can't be in bed, you have to be in an office. But really, thank you for doing that.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Um,
So,